All right, welcome to another edition of the Plus One interview. As you all know, after the whistle, we're still kind of on hiatus. We do a show here and there, but we still the interview segments are still going on. So today we got a special guest, Miss Lauren Williams, all the way from Detroit. She's here. She covers the Pistons and the Lions. Lauren, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me.
Not a problem. It's been a crazy. What are we in June? It's been a crazy 3 months.
Indeed, it has.
It doesn't seem like it's been only 3 months, but it's only three going on 4. Tell me how's everything been happening? You're in the middle of covering basketball, and then boom, everything happens. Season suspended, and then it's like, what's going on? So when you first got the news, where were you when you first got the news, and then what were your step? What was your thought process?
So I covered the Pistons for MLive, so I actually don't get the opportunity to travel to all of the away games. So I was actually at home watching the Pistons-Sixers game that was going on. That was pretty much the last game I think that happened before they shut everything down. And I remember they played out the game, and I saw Sham's tweet about Rudy Gobert testing positive, and then all of a sudden you just kind of see the flurry of everything happening, especially going on with OKC, everything being kind of suspended until they got further word on what to do. And it's just kind of like the bottom fell out once got word that they were going to suspend the season. So it was just kind of a mad dash of trying to figure out where to go from there, how we are going to talk to the Pistons players, because we're not going to have access, especially since I wasn't, in Philadelphia. So you just kind of had to work with what you got. Fortunately, they made Langston Galloway available to Fox Sports Detroit, so I was able to get that feed and get his take on what was going on, as well as, Coach Casey and his regular post-game presser. So that's kind of where we were on March 11th. And then you just kind of had to pick up the pieces as news came out from the league on what the next steps were for moving forward.
And for you, as someone who works in the media, who covers the sports, where it was also the process of, okay, we still have to find content. We still have to put things out. We still have to keep the public informed of what's going on with the team. So how is it just trying to be able to keep people informed and getting content on the teams as this thing kept going?
So this is actually my first year covering the Pistons. So I still, have a little bit of room to grow in terms of, building on relationships, but you just kind of have to make the best of what's available. I took the time to really, really try and dig into the history of the Pistons. You kind of hear about the bad boys, and you kind of know the gist of the bad boys, but to really get in the heads of what they were actually thinking at the time, that was really important to me, to make sure that I really grasped the actual historical context of what the Pistons were, and kind of put it into a little bit of a view of what's happening now. Because when the bad boys were going on, they were rebuilding the team, especially once they started with drafting Isaiah Thomas, then they brought on Bill Laimbeer, and now they're kind of in a similar boat where they're trying to rebuild back to the glory days of what they had before. And then I also relied a lot on, listening to different podcasts, because, they were going out and about talking to different people, especially, because when all of that stuff was happening, they were getting ready to air The Last Dance. So kind of hearing their perspective on that time with Jordan and, that 80, was it 90 Eastern Conference Finals, or 91. They kind of beat the crap out of him. It was 91. That
was when Detroit went to the finals.
Yeah.
That was 90. That was a 90.
90. Okay, I had it right the first time. So it's kind of just amazing to get their perspective on all of that went down, especially all of the fallout from that with the dream team for Isaiah Thomas. So that's kind of what I focused on. And then it gave me the opportunity to kind of stretch my wings a little bit in terms of venturing into mailbag territory.
Mm-hmm.
But I've, just trying to find different ways to be accessible, I guess, to the fans.
Yeah.
And try and be as creative as I can. I've been trying to come up with a multitude of different ideas. Some of them are good, some of them are not. But fortunately, every time I'm ready to kind of pull the trigger on doing something breaks and you kind of have to shift focus.
Yeah, and especially with Detroit, with the Pistons, they mean so much to the city of Detroit, to the community. People that grew up in Detroit during the Bad Boy era, and even during the second act when with Rip Hamilton and Chauncey Billups, whenever the Pistons are doing well, it seems like the community is thriving and the city is doing well. Can you talk about that connection that the native Detroiters have with the Pistons? Because it seems like they really how should I put this? They really exemplify what being from Detroit means.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it too with a little bit of the Lions and how they talk about being a blue collar town. I think, when you think of Detroit, especially just like the Midwest in general, you think of this kind of like gritty, hardworking group of people. And I don't know, it's just the way that Detroit basketball plays, or the way that the Lions try to play. It's all about putting their best foot forward and showing off the hard work that they're doing. So I think when people can see the results of that hard work, it's hard not to kind of grasp onto that and relate to it and just want to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, now the Pistons, they made some noise during this dead period by hiring Troy Weaver as the new general manager. Troy Weaver, he's a guy I've been reading. He's well respected around the league. This was major news. A lot of people had good things to say about Troy Weaver. Just in your assessment, what did you make of the hiring?
I mean, I think it's a very, very good hire for Detroit, especially because they wanted him 2 years ago when Ed Stefanski came on, and it just was a matter of timing. It didn't work out well, so that's why he wasn't brought on. That's why he didn't come on board. I think that his eye for talent is going to be something that the Pistons can really take advantage of and really utilize, especially since he calls this a restoring and not really a rebuilding. I think the fact that he was a huge advocate for Russell Westbrook is something that a lot of people are going to grasp onto, especially because now you look at where Westbrook is and how big of a star he is and how talented he is and how much he and Kevin Durant and Steven Adams and even James Harden, how much they really meant to building Oklahoma City into kind of a powerhouse that it is. And, he also isn't afraid to make the hard decisions, especially when it comes to trading away such big names. So I think that, right now Detroit has two very big name savvy veterans in Griffin and Derrick Rose. And they both have a lot of potential in terms of what they can do for the younger guys that are coming up, but also they could be, converted into assets that could help bring other people on board that might be able to get the Pistons back to a championship caliber team that they're trying so hard to be.
Yeah, and this was also a big move because there's not that many African-American GMs. This was also a big move as we're seeing more teams are starting to look into more African-American candidates. That's really big, especially for a community that has a large African-American population. So I think that's another step in the right direction for them to get back to the championship form, because I think when their last championships or their last finals appearance, Joe Dumars was Joe Dumars the GM?
He was. Yeah. He was actually, I believe, 3 or 4 years on the job when they won the championship in 2004.
Yeah, so that the success that Troy Weaver has, and if he could turn it around in Detroit, this is going to give more teams to look at more African American candidates. I also talked about this, how UCLA hired the first African American athletic director. The success he has, it's going to help move forward and get more African Americans in that position.
Right. It's definitely important because it shows that there is a pipeline for, Black and African American people who want to be general managers or want to be at the top of an organization making those decisions. I mean, you look at it right now, there are still a number of Black assistant general managers still around the league. And, at the end of the day, there were three, it was Weaver, it was Jeff Peterson, and the guy from the Clippers, I'm blanking on his name right now, who were the finalists. So I think it's a really big deal that they did look at hiring somebody who had a diverse background. At the end of the day, they also wanted to make sure that they were the right fit and had the right qualifications. And it worked out in their favor that Weaver was that guy. But the idea of representation, it does matter, especially since the majority of the players in the league are Black.
Yeah, now for the Pistons, for the team, where they go? Where do they go? What moves should they make? Because they're 20-46. Mm-hmm. The leading scorer is Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose, he's kind of, his second act has been really great. Last year with Minnesota, and now leading the Pistons in scoring. But he's getting older. Like where should they? Like what do they have to do to get back to being a contender, or to just being a competitive team?
Right. Well, I think one of the big things that's on their mind right now is finding a point guard that can be the point guard of the future for them. In Coach Casey's postseason availability, he mentioned wanting to have somebody who was kind of NBA ready, who, didn't need too much time to develop. So who that may be in the draft, we don't know. They have a 10.5% chance at the top pick. And, from what I'm hearing, or from, where the things are pointing, it doesn't make sense for them to not take LaMelo Ball. But at the end of the day, too, Troy Weaver said that, finding the right fit meant finding the right person. Talent can be what you see right now, but you want to look at the overarching person and whether they have the drive to actually be that NBA ready point guard versus kind of coasting. Mm-hmm. That's something that's also very important for Coach Casey. I also think, kind of determining how they handle the contracts of Derrick Rose and Blake Griffin is something that's going to be also important to them, just because Blake Griffin has, the most expensive contract on the team right now, especially.
He can't stay healthy.
And yes, exactly. So I think that's going to be another thing that they're going to be looking at. But I think that Troy Weaver, from what he said in his intro presser this week, he values both Derrick Rose and Blake Griffin a lot, especially because of the experience that they bring with them, the ability that they might be able to help, the younger guys that are coming up in their development. So I don't know. I don't envy being in that position at all, just because you want to be able to trade for assets, but what assets are you going to get back?
Yeah, and the past couple of draft picks, they haven't, they kind of, some of their last few draft picks have kind of whipped. Stanley Johnson, he's no longer on the team. Is Luke Kennard, is he still on the team?
He's still on the team, yep.
But I haven't seen the progression from him. He's had moments, but he's still trying to figure out. Granted, he's still young. He's still a young player. He's still trying to figure out. So they have ways to go, and they're in the East too. They get the benefit of being in the East. So you could kind of win like 28, 30 games and make the playoffs, but that's it's like an early exit waiting to happen.
Well, the thing with Luke Kennard is, I definitely think he is an incredibly important piece to the franchise. Before he was injured last year, he was actually averaging about 15.8 points per game. So that's a pretty significant bump from where he was the year before. So he definitely has a lot of potential, to be a big shooter for them. They also have Svi Mihailuk, who is also shooting, I believe, let me just double check this. I believe he is shooting he's shooting like 41% or 40% beyond three. So especially with the way that the game is kind of panning out, that 3-pointers are the big ticket items, having those guys on the team is really big for them. They also have, defensive powerhouse in Bruce Brown, and he's been putting in a lot of work to develop the offensive side of his game. So I think that they have the pieces in place, and I think that with Coach Casey and his staff, they're doing a really good job of developing the guys that they've picked up in the last couple of drafts. Obviously things just take time. Restores aren't going to happen overnight. So I think that, the guys that they have, they do, again, have that drive that, I was talking about earlier to be better, and they're team players. So I think they're gonna be okay.
Yeah. Also, shout out to Bruce Brown, a Boston native. He's every time he comes here, he draws a big crowd at the Garden. Now, allegedly, the NBA season is supposedly to resume in just a couple weeks. A lot of people are still skeptical about even having basketball. A lot of people are skeptical of having these players go down to Florida with the spike in cases. Overall, what are your thoughts about that? Because I feel like they shouldn't put these guys in jeopardy, especially going down there in Florida.
I think what's a little bit concerning to me right now is that, they've started testing these players, and now we're seeing, I think we've had at least 6 players now that we've heard have tested positive for COVID.
I know. I just saw Buddy Hield tested positive.
Yeah, so far I have, from what I can remember, I have Jokic, Buddy Hield. I think Alex Lynn also was somebody who they said tested positive. Malcolm Brogdon. Derek Jones Jr., who plays for the Heat. He's in Florida, the state that is having, these spikes. And then I think I saw Jabari Parker.
Jabari Parker, yep.
Yeah, he's also tested positive. So, I don't know. I think that they're going to have to look at a lot of different things, especially because I think I read that the Disney staff, they're not required to stay in the bubble. So I think that's kind of something that I might have to relook at. And I don't know. I just personally, I think that now's not the time to jump the gun and restart the season. I know that there are going to be some consequences that are going to happen with not doing that, especially when it comes to, the individual caps and the revenue that the league is going to pull in. But I don't know, revenue, people's lives, health.
It's just not safe. And also a lot of these guys have kids, have families. So, I remember Chris Paul was talking about it when he got back after they canceled the season. They suspended. He said he had to stay in his garage. He had to stay in his garage just so, and not go in the house just so because he couldn't be around his kids. So, they're risking it. They are risking it, right. And it's just not. I don't know. I think this year should have just been the league just should have took an L for this year because we just keep seeing more and more cases more cases happening, and having these guys out there, you have to think long term. This is just minor.
And I mean, Texas, who was another one of the states that was seeing a big spike in terms of numbers and cases. The governor just announced that he's shutting down, the reopening phases. So the fact that Texas is taking a step back, I think that Florida should also be a state that takes a step back from reopening. I know my aunt, she's a nurse in, one of the hospitals in Orlando, and she told me that the ICUs are at capacity, and this was on Sunday. So the fact that, more case numbers have kind of come out, I think it's kind of cavalier to not take this seriously and just kind of test your luck and see if it will work out in your favor. I think, too, the other thing is once you get in the bubble, I don't know how much you're going to actually be able to control the spread, especially since, the early when all of this first came out, the way that they explained how, the transmission of droplets happened, it could infect up to 3 people. So if one person isn't, infecting 3 more people, it's it can just spread and get out of control really, really fast. And the fact that they were so cautious when this first started, when they first shut things down, you know, I really hope that they'll take a similar attitude soon once they realize that America hasn't flattened the curve and things aren't getting better.
Yeah, and with everything going on, I can fully understand that for them to cancel it, because what if they have one game and then somebody gets it? They're gonna have to just suspend it again, and then we won't know when basketball will be played again, because it's gonna take another 3-4 months for them to figure it out.
Exactly.
Also, something I also wanted to talk about. We've seen, you know, all the protests happening across the nation. We're seeing WNBA players opt out of playing to go help out, to go into activism. Just can I get your thoughts on that? Because
Absolutely.
Maya Moore was kind of the catalyst on this. She started this, and now there's been a few more WNBA players who have done it. So I think this is quite the thing for them to do.
I 100% agree. I think that the way that you want to affect social change is a very personal decision. You know, I can see both sides of the argument of going back to play and, you know, being able to speak on it every time that you have a microphone in your face, and, you know, continuing to raise awareness on it that can, you know, that can affect somehow. But I also think, like, actually going out there and, you know, trying to do as much as you can, you know, physically, I think that can also make a huge difference. And the fact that somebody is willing to step away from their career for a certain amount of time to actually try and do that, I have nothing but the utmost respect for them to do that, especially since, you know, the onus of trying to create change or to make change has always fallen on Black people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that when somebody is willing to take up that cause and willing to put their body on the line, especially, you know, with everything that can come with it, you know, police brutality and rubber bullets and tear gas and everything that we've seen over the last few weeks, I think the fact that you're still willing to put yourself out there and do that, again, I have nothing but the utmost respect.
And also, as a woman working in sports, it's not the easiest thing for you as a woman, especially an African American woman. We hear so many stories of women they're not being taken serious, or, you know, when it comes to getting promoted, they don't get the promotion even though they have better qualifications than the person that they get it. Just how have you been able to just, you know, keep a level head, be able to still do your job, because you're getting so many things thrown at you, and maybe getting so many doors closed in your face, even though you know you have the qualifications. Just for you, how are you just able to just, you know, keep yourself motivated and not let it bother you?
Yeah, I think that so this is actually, I like to call it my first big girl job, if you will. So I graduated from Syracuse in 2015 with a master's in magazine, newspaper, and online journalism. And, you know, I didn't get hired right away, which was kind of, you know, a little bit soul crushing. But at the same time, if this is something that you really, really want to do, it doesn't matter how long it takes you, you're going to keep going until you get it. It took me 3 years to actually 4 years to get a full-time job in sports journalism. You know, after I graduated, I worked part-time for the Patriots as a lifestyle reporter. And then I also did swim lessons. I taught swim lessons on the side to kind of make ends meet. And that's just kind of what I had to do while I was still applying for full-time positions. I've had so many no's, but I don't know. This is where I belong, and I feel it in my bones. So I couldn't give up. I couldn't. So I was really fortunate that when I applied for this position with MLive, I was met with somebody who was very invested in my growth as a reporter and who wanted nothing but the best for me and has encouraged me to put myself out there more and more. And that's just kind of like what I've been doing to get better, to improve. And fortunately, I have a lot of good mentors in my corner who are willing to call me out when I make mistakes. And, you know, we're all human, we're going to make mistakes, and how you take that feedback is really important. It just takes one person to say yes, and you have to make the most of that opportunity, and I'm trying to do that.
Yeah, definitely. And especially in this growing field of sports journalism, we're seeing there's a lot of sideline reporters were female, or female of color. We're seeing that more. And it's just, and now these companies, they have no reason to deny females or any person a position if they're qualified, especially females who we've seen that can get the job done. Because if you look on any broadcast, it's like there's an African American reporter who's a sideline reporter. I think that's really big because there's a lot of girls that may be nervous about getting into this type of field because it's so male dominated.
And I think what's great is that the time right now, you know, again, it just takes that one person. And I think that, you know, the reason why we're seeing more and more women, you know, being at the forefront is because we're seeing these male allies who are willing, again, to be mentors, are willing to give that opportunity, that chance. And, you know, these women, they're rock stars, they're superstars, they're taking the opportunity that they can and they're running with it and they're doing amazing work. And I think that at the end of the day, it's, you know, you can get any opportunity out there as long as you keep putting yourself out there for it. And when you do get it, it's a matter of what you do with it and how much you make of it.
Yeah, that's that. Definitely. You know, football season, that's another thing. We're not sure if that's going to happen. The Hall of Fame game has been canceled.
Well, it's been postponed technically to next year.
You're right.
Technically.
Right? Technically. Training camps usually begin next month. A lot of teams got beginning the first couple weeks into July is when the rookies start to report. The Detroit Lions, they are a frustrating team to folks in Detroit for many years.
Love-hate relationship.
So much of a love-hate relationship. They always come back, but then they question why they come back. One thing that was interesting, they brought back they bring back the head coach who a lot of people thought he should have been gone. Their best defensive back that ever go. Their quarterback, he's up there, he's getting up there in age, got a big contract, but all these injuries. There's a lot of question marks around the Detroit Pistons.
You mean the Lions?
Detroit Lions. I'm thinking. Thanks for the correction. Yeah, the Detroit Lions. There's a lot of questions around the Detroit Lions. Can you just take me to some of your concerns with the team?
You know, on paper, I think that they've tried to set themselves up as, you know, a team that can at least be, you know, 7-9 maybe. I don't know. I think that, you know, Stafford, he says he's ready to go. And I think something that we saw at the beginning of last season is he still has quite the arm on him. You know, he was on pace to be one of the top quarterbacks in the league. You know, I think that they've done a good job of picking up quite a number of weapons that can, you know, be on the ground for him so that he's not shouldering so much of that. But they also brought back Danny Amendola, who I think is, you know, a really, really great third down wide receiver. They have DeAndre Swift from UGA, who, you know, is a great fit for the team. You know, he can be kind of a receiver as well as a running back. They also still have Kerryon Johnson, And then they also have Bo Scarborough, who was really, really coming on toward the end of the season before he got injured. So I think that they have quite a number of pieces in place, especially since they're still bringing back Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones Jr., who led the league in, receiving touchdowns. So I think that before injuries, I think that if they can, sustain that energy that they're bringing each and every game, and hopefully they've been doing a lot of work to prevent those injuries from happening again, I think that they could be okay. It's just a matter of what they're going to bring on game day.
Yeah, and their division is not the easiest ones too, because the other three teams in that division, they've all got a pretty good solid defense. The quarterbacks on one of the teams, but the Vikings and the Packers got an established offense. So it's gonna be, if they don't get off to the right track and if they don't win the games that they should win, it's gonna be another year of just what are we doing, Detroit Lions? Yeah,
I think that they could have a pretty good position in terms of being third in the division. We shall see. As you mentioned, the Bears have a pretty good defense. But I also think on paper, like I said, I think that they set themselves up. They've really beefed up in terms of linebackers. They've beefed up in terms of, their defensive core with their young defensive backs. They brought on Duron Harmon, who's a veteran safety from the Patriots. So, I think that Matt Patricia has found a ton of players who bought into the philosophy that he had when he was coaching at the Patriots. And I think that could also, really work in his favor because they kind of understand the terminology. They understand what he's trying to do. So it's not as if he's trying to fix things from the ground up, but he has a lot of other assets that can help fill in the gaps where people might be missing things.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also at this point, all Detroit Lions fans are looking for is a playoff win. That's if they can get a playoff win, that I think they might throw a parade for Matt Patricia because they haven't won a playoff game in how many years?
A lot of years. I think the last time they went to the playoffs was 2016?
2016, I believe. That sounds about right.
When Caldwell was here?
Yeah. Yeah, Caldwell led them to back-to-back.
2016. And they lost the wild card round. So it's been about 3-4 years since they've seen a playoff. I think, like I said, I think that they have the pieces in place. They're doing everything that they can with the virtual off-season program. I think, too, what happens on game day is those in-game adjustments. I think the things that we see is that teams are pretty quick to pick up what the Lions are putting down. So it's a matter of how quickly they'll be able to adjust accordingly.
Yeah. So, well, hopefully we get a football season, but I'm just very optimistic. I don't even know about sports this year because even college football, we're seeing players on teams testing positive, and it's just, we might be in for a year without sports. And I think, with everything going on in the country, not a lot of people will be mad about that. Plug your social media. If they want to reach you, if they want to contact you, they want to see your work, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, them all.
You can read all of my work at MLive.com. But on social media, on Twitter, I'm Lauren Willie. So that's WILLI23. There are a lot of Lauren Williamses, so I had to make it work. Instagram is the same exact thing, but I typically post most of my professional stuff on Twitter.
All right, definitely. Lauren, thank you once again.
Thank you.
Lastly, anything you're working on now before we get out? Any new projects you're working on?
I'm working right now on a piece about Svi Mikhailuk's development over the last couple of years, so that'll be interesting to take a look at, especially since he's been a pretty big part of the Pistons rebuild, and he's been a pretty important piece in the puzzle. So it'll be fun.
All right, Lauren. Thank you once again for coming on, for taking the time to chat with me. This was a great conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you guys have been watching a Plus One segment. That is Lauren Williams. She went to Syracuse. I'm not going to judge her. I'm just messing with you. You guys have a great day.
All right, then. Bye, guys.